My name is Julian Reid. I've been a paranormal investigator for over 40 years. In that time, I've seen some things that are frightening and many that were terrifying. Extreme poltergeist, possessions, strange happenings, but worst of all, demons. Come and join the journey with my ghost stories. Hello and welcome to Ghost Stories with me, Julian Reid. This is St Helens Road in Swansea. This is the end with the hospital and one of the many churches that are on that road, and this is a photograph that was taken back in Victorian days. As you can see, this is a colorized photograph and it shows the extent of the road and how long it actually is. Now here's the other end, and this was another photograph taken round about the same time. As you can see, there were trams running on that road, and those are electric trams, and also you will see the YMCA there. Now the YMCA is one of the old buildings in and on that road. This road has changed dramatically over the years, but when I worked there in the 1970s, I worked at a place called Shaftesbury Halls. Now it was called Shaftesbury Halls because it had a large hall upstairs and a smaller one downstairs. And the proprietor, when it was opened, was a Mr. Williamson, and he ran that hall for many, many years. Eventually, he came out of there and other people went in to manage it, and it changed hands a few times. However, it always stayed true to what it was, right up until the 1960s. Then Shaftesbury Hall became not just a theatre upstairs, but a print work downstairs. And that print work was there right up until the late 90s. And that was run by Mr. Williams, funny enough, but no relation to the one that had it originally. You know, here's Qualprint. This is the company, and I worked for them. And while Qualprint was downstairs, upstairs it got converted into an auction house, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. This building was very old and it had loads of the old features, but when Qualprint had the downstairs, they turned it into an absolute stinkhole, and I worked there, my first full-time job in print. The road was busy, and I worked on that street for about 3.5 years. Got my lunch on the street, met friends there, bought items in all the different shops that were there. It's a very cosmopolitan street. It has changed immensely now, and it's what they call the curry house of Swansea. And because there are so many Indian restaurants, etc., on the road now, that it has changed the dynamic of it completely. Round the back of the building was the entrance that I used to go into, and this isn't a photograph of the actual building, this is just to show you the sort of building that it was. And I had keys, and in the morning I would arrive usually about 7 in the morning and get set up for about 8 o'clock, start work at that time. When we worked in the printers, or when I worked in the printers, it was litho, which meant that it was printing books, magazines, that type of thing. And a print factory would run usually from about 9 o'clock right through till about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. Often I'd find myself having to work even later just to catch up with the work that was needed to be done, as I was the graphic designer. As the graphic designer, and this is the days way before computers, everything was done by hand, and all the illustrations, etc., all done by hand. And we used to use letraset, which was like a lettering that was that you'd rub basically onto the paper and the letters would come out. And we used typing machines, which would in turn get all the typing done. Now, there was a very fancy stairwell that ran upstairs, and you'd often see someone on that stairwell that wasn't there, and that stairwell was running up to the auction house, and the auctions were once a month, maybe at the very most twice a month upstairs. You'd look up, see someone, look away, look back again, and they were just gone. It was really disconcerting, especially when you were a young man working your first job. Now, often you'd see someone coming out from upstairs and walking along the corridor at the top, and then walk down the stairs. Sometimes you'd see a man, sometimes you'd see a woman, and sometimes you'd see a group of people. Often you'd see them in period clothes. The theatre itself, now, when it was an actual theatre, it had a large stage, seating, and a balcony. Now, me and my friends used to sneak up the back stairs and get into the actual balcony area, and that back stairs was boarded up, and we would pull the boards off. It was very scary, and go up, because you'd often hear noises and things coming from the top floor. And again, as I say, traffic was busy on the road, but we're talking now about late at night. You'd hear things being scraped across the floor, you'd hear banging, you'd hear people running around, you'd hear talking, you'd hear singing, and also you'd hear things going bump all the time. And you'd think to yourself, either those rats have got massive hobnail boots or somebody's up there. But I had the key. Nobody else could get into that building when I'd locked the doors and locked myself in. And when I was with friends, they were too scared to go anywhere in that building on their own. They'd wait for me, and then we'd creep up the back stairs and have a look at the actual place. That was Shaftesbury Hall's upstairs 600-seater theatre. The strange thing is, on that stairs you'd hear voices and you'd see people staring at you on the way up. It was really, really strange, because it was just as if it's their heads only. Sometimes they were frozen, and sometimes they were animated and looking straight at you. Some of my friends really didn't like coming into that building, but we were young, so we did silly things. You'd often see a woman on her own, and she used to wander around the actual place, and you'd see her in a state of undress, not completely naked, just from the shoulders up. And as she walked through, she'd just stare at you. And she used to walk through the print factory, not just upstairs. And we'd often find things moved, or machines would just stop for no reason at all, and we'd know she was there, she was in the area. And this was day or night. In the daytime, you'd see dark shadows travelling across the floor and across the room. And at night time, you'd see almost full-formed shapes of people. But this lady, you could see her as plain as day, and she'd always catch you out. It would always be at a time when you were busy concentrating on the work that you were doing. However, when you went upstairs, it was a completely different story. Upstairs you'd find that it was more activity than most places. Even when you went up there, you could hear pianos playing, and you'd think there's no pianos even in the building, but you'd hear the noise of pianos. You'd also hear a lot of people moaning or talking, and you'd hear chains. You'd hear chains all the time, as if people were dragging things or pulling things up, like scenery. It could have been anything at all, but those noises were always there. We also used to hear people as if they were wearing chains, and I think that was probably people doing old productions. One of the most scariest places I've ever worked, because it was an old building from the 1890s. It had gone through many, many different sort of forms, and when I worked there, it was the spookiest place I've ever been in. I hope you enjoyed that. A little bit about the history of Swansea and a little bit about Shaftesbury Hall's haunted. Don't have nightmares. Just a quick footnote, the building no longer exists. So much for preserving our heritage, but apparently it makes a lovely car park. Bye for now.